Hello, welcome to the 225 literary and jury charge portion of the class. I'm going to start out with a small selection from the book Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, and it's all the small stuff. Okay, all right, here we go. And I'm going to read this at 200. Okay, ready? So many of us live our lives as if the secret purpose is to somehow get everything done. We stay up late, get up early, and avoid having fun, and keep our loved ones waiting. Sadly, I've seen many people who put off their loved ones so long that the loved ones lose interest in maintaining the relationship. I used to do this myself. Often we convince ourselves that our obsession with our to-do list is only temporary, that once we get through the list, we'll be calm, relaxed, and happy. But in reality, this rarely happens. As items are checked off, new ones simply replace them. The nature of your in basket is that it's meant to have items to be completed in it. It's not meant to be empty. There will always be phone calls that need to be made, projects to complete, and work to be done. In fact, it can be argued that a full in-basket is essential for success. It means your time is in demand, regardless of who you are and what you do, however. Remember that nothing is more important than your own sense of happiness and inner peace and that of your loved ones. If you're obsessed with getting everything done, you'll never have a sense of well-being. In reality, almost everything can wait. Very little in our work lives truly falls into the emergency category. If you stay focused on your work, it will all get done in due time. I find that if I remind myself frequently that the purpose of life isn't to get it all done, but to enjoy each step along the way and live a full life filled with love, it's far easier for me to control my obsession with completing my list of things to do. Remember, when you die, there will still be unfinished business to take care of. And you know what? Someone else will do it for you. Don't waste any more precious moments of your life regretting the inevitable. Okay, I have some jury charge for you. This subject is scope of employment. Ready? Ladies and gentlemen, it is the law of this state that whenever a motor vehicle is operated upon any street or highway of the state by any person other than the owner with the consent of the owner, express or implied, the operator therefore shall, in case of accident, be deemed the agent of the owner of such vehicle in the operation thereof. Therefore, the operation of a vehicle on a public highway by one who is not the owner creates and justifies an inference that the vehicle is being used for the owner and with his authority until and unless such inference is overcome by the other evidence. Deviation from the regular course of duty does not necessarily take the employee out of the scope of his employment. If the employee combines his own business with that of his employer and is attending to both at the same time, then he is still within the scope of his employment. The test of liability of the employer is whether, at the time of the accident, the employee was performing some act in furtherance of his employer's business, as well as in his own interest. However, if the employee abandons and turns away completely from the employer's business to engage in some purpose wholly his own, then he is outside the scope of his employment, and the employer is released from any liability. If the employee steps outside of his employment to do some act for himself not connected with the employer's business, there is no responsibility on the employer for such act. But if the employee is, at the time of such deviation, also serving the employer's purpose to some extent, there may be a liability on the part of the employer also. This represents the question for the jury. The burden of proof rests upon the defendant to prove by the greater weight of the evidence that the truck at the time of the accident was not being used in the company or in the business of the company. Okay, I have a speech for you. Here we go. Ready? The theme of our meeting today is indeed timely. We, as teachers of the English language, have invited ourselves to consider getting back to basics, but as we know, there is hardly agreement among us about what is basic to the teaching of our language. Nevertheless, there has developed among us a feeling that we as teachers have gone astray, and we have gathered here to examine what is really basic. I, for one, am quite pleased to respond to that question, and I will tell you why. 2 years ago, I was terminated by the small college at which I had been director of freshman writing for 5 years because I did not hold a PhD degree. That gave me the chance to return to the real world. I now have the title of senior planner for my employer, but I continue to teach basic English one evening a week to bank employees. It is from this real-life perspective that I present to you today my design for getting back to the basics. I think it is right on this occasion to reconsider some famous American persons and words to rediscover what basic reminders they have for us. Let us begin with a bit of Benjamin Franklin in an excellent piece of writing of his where he reveals some very significant things about the ability to write. He tells us, first of all, how his own ability to write was in large part responsible for his advancement in the world. In Franklin's words, as prose writing has been of great use to me in the course of my life and was a principal means of my advancement, I shall tell you how I acquired what little ability I have in that way. He also says with simple significance, I sat down to put my arguments in writing, and this was to teach me a method in the arrangement of thoughts. Further on, he shares with us an event in his life that again emphasizes the benefit he gained from being able to write. Our debates possessed me so fully on the subject that I wrote and printed a pamphlet on it, entitled The Nature and Necessity of a Paper Currency. It was well received by the common people in general, but the rich men disliked it, for it increased the clamor for more money, and they happening to have no writers among them were able to answer it. Their opposition slackened, and the point was carried by a majority in the House. My friends there, who conceived that I had been of some service, thought fit to reward me by employing me in printing the money, a very profitable job and a great help to me. This was another advantage gained by me, being able to write. Franklin also tells us that he attended a grammar school. He went there at the age of 8, attended for a year or so, and then transferred to a school of writing and arithmetic. Today, Benjamin Franklin could not attend a grammar school because they don't exist anymore. Try to discover a school by that title operating today. You will have a difficult time of it. Or ask any 3 people where grammar school fits into the grade structure 1 through 12, and you will get 3 different answers. There is a great deal of confusion about where it fits into the traditional grade school structure, but don't blame the average citizen for this confusion. Even the dictionaries do not agree. They sometimes equate grammar school with elementary school, and often the elementary schools can't agree on what is elemental. Just try it sometime. If you would like to see for yourself the total confusion that attends this subject, consult any 3 people or any 3 dictionaries on the matter. Webster's comes as close to the mark as any, I think. It defines grammar school as the grades between the primary grades and high school. I went to such a school. It was an aspect of school at that time that occurred during grades 5, 6, 7, and 8. It also occurred during the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, and does not occur now. After grade 8, high school followed. The procedure was that structural, that basic. It worked rather well. For me, it is sad to note the passing of that era. We were taught in those days by teachers who knew their grammar. They also knew from common sense that some difficulty in life is certain and that learning requires effort. They stressed the rules and regulations and drills as an ordinary means to the end of knowing the basics, and I thank them today. Today, grammar school has gone away, fallen through the cracks in American education made by the incursions of middle schools and junior high schools or middle schools. So too, as to the schooling in concepts of grammar has slipped away. In 1776, Thomas Paine wrote his pamphlet on common sense. In clear and concise language, he argued that the time for independence had come, and so engaged the American mind to that reasonable cause. But in recent years, far from the common sense, we have been hearing utter nonsense from some educators about the right of students to their own language. Such nonsense is a prescription not for a return to the basics, but for a journey into chaos and confusion, a modern Tower of Babel. All right. I have a land description for you. Here we go. Ready? City limits of said city to the intersection with the westerly production of the north line of the Lot 22 of Fig Garden Estates, number 11, as said lot is shown on the map thereof, filed in the office of the County Recorder, April 8, 2015, and recorded in volume 17 of plats at page 66, Deschutes County Records, thence easterly, along the westerly production of the north line of said Lot 22, and along the north lines of lots 22, 23, and 24 of said Fig Garden Estates number 11, and along the north lines of lots 22, 23, and 24 of the Fig Garden Estates number 19, as said lots are shown on the map thereof, followed in the office of the County Recorder March 13, 2007, and recorded in volume 19 of plats at page 16, Deschutes County Records, and along the north lines of lots 36 to 40, inclusive of Fig Garden Estates number 2, as said lots are shown on the map thereof, filed in the office of the County Recorder November 7, 2012, and recorded in volume 16 of plats at page 6, Deschutes County Records, and along the easterly production of the north line of said lot, 40 being also along the existing city limits of said city, to the intersection with the east line of the southwest quarter of Section 8, Township 13 South, Range 20 East, Pilot Butte Base, and Meridian, as said section is shown on the United States Government Township plats, thence northerly along the east line of the southwest quarter of said Section 8, being also along the existing city limits of said city, to the intersection with the center line of West Century Avenue, thence westerly along the center line of West Century Avenue, and along the north line of Lot 27 of said Bullard Lanes, irrigated subdivision number 1, being also along the north line of the Fig Garden Estates number 12, as shown on the map thereof, filed in the office of the Deschutes County Records to the point of beginning. Okay. Have an article here for you, and we'll read this at 200. Ready? They lifted the front of my vehicle off the man who was wedged beneath, face down in the street. 2 detectives in an unmarked unit appeared almost at once. A patrolman arrived in seconds. He leaped from his squad car, sprinted to the man, lifted his head, and then dropped it back onto the pavement. "Oh," he said as he slowly straightened up, wiping his hands on his pants, "it's only Marty. I fished for my phone in my purse and grabbed my phone to call my mother." A detective looked at me and pointed to the phone with a finger. "No need to upset your folks," he said. "Now, how fast were you going when you saw the man lying in the street?" "He was walking," I said. "I hit him. To my surprise, they neither took me to jail nor gave me a ticket." The detective who drove me home tried to be comforting. "My insurance company would pay to repair my car," he said. "I saw no damage. All I could see was that man lying in the street. The medics had splinted his leg. It must have been broken. When they lifted him into the ambulance, he looked unconscious. I was puzzled. The police seemed to be treating the victim in a rather weird fashion." The detective explained to my mother. "The man I ran over was named Marty Beale, the town's most arrested drunk, jailed hundreds of times. So far that year, and it was only August, he had been run down in the street 7 times. His most recent accident involved the bus, which ran him over as he lay in the gutter breaking his leg. The morning of our encounter, he appeared before a judge who released him in exchange for the promise he would never drink again. He walked over to Mill Street, earned a few dollars washing cars, and bought a jug of wine to quench his thirst on that hot summer night. Residents called police soon after to complain that he had shed his clothes and was strolling naked in the street. Afraid to jail him again so soon after his release, they simply ordered him to get dressed and move on. which he did moments later, into the path of my car. At least he was wearing clothes at the time. I spent a sleepless night worrying about his injuries. I was stunned the next morning to see that the hood of my car was dented, the grille mangled, and that his head had shattered the windshield. I took a bus to the hospital carrying books and candy. His bed was empty. "Why are you looking for him?" a nurse asked. "I hit him with my car last night," I said. She screamed with laughter and asked about damage to my car. It must have been like hitting a bull moose. He had sobered up and been released. I hoped to keep the accident secret from my coworkers, who often teased me because I was young and shy. But when I picked up the morning paper, there was a photo of Marty sprawled in the street in front of my shiny little car. The headline said I hit him 3 times, with the fender, with the windshield, and then the entire car. I ran him over. The story was meant to be clever. It mentioned his second, the bus, and my name. I recalled a splash of light that I had assumed was the police shooting pictures to use against me. But a newspaper? How on earth, I wondered, do reporters ever get these things? Okay. He had found her already. Oh no, she thought. Lord, no. Eyes filling with tears of despair, filled with nausea, the young woman sagged against the window frame as she stared through a crack in the blinds. The battered Ford pickup, as gray as the turbulent Atlantic Ocean a few hundred yards up the road, eased to a stop in front of her house in this pretty neighborhood of Crowell, Massachusetts, north of Boston. This was the very truck she had come to dread, the truck that regularly careened through her dreams, sometimes with its tires on fire, sometimes shooting blood from its tailpipe, sometimes piloted by an invisible driver bent on tearing her heart from her chest. Oh no. The engine shut off and tapped as it cooled. The dusk light was failing and the interior of the pickup was dark, but she knew the occupant was staring at her. In her mind, she could see his features as clearly as if he were standing 10 feet away in broad August sunlight. Carrie Swanson knew he would have that faint smile of impatience on his face, that he would be tugging an earlobe marred with 2 piercings long ago, infected and closed up, leaving an ugly scar. She knew his breathing would be labored, her own breath in panicked gasps. Hands trembling, Carrie drew back from the window. Crawling to the front hallway, she tore open the drawer of a small table and took out the pistol. She looked outside again. The driver didn't approach the house. He simply played his all too familiar game, sitting in the front seat of his old junker and staring at her. He had found her already, just 1 week after she had moved there. He had followed her for over 2,000 miles. All the efforts to cover her tracks had been futile. The brief peace she had enjoyed was gone. David Dale had found her. Carrie, born Catherine Kelly Swanson, was a sensible, pleasant-mannered 28-year-old who had been raised in the Midwest by a loving family. She was a natural-born student with a degree to her name and plans for a PhD. Her career until the move here, fashion modeling, had provided her with both a large investment account and a chance to work regularly in such pampering places as Paris, Cape Town, London, Rio, and Bermuda. She drove a nice car, had always bought herself modest but comfortable houses, and had provided for her parents. It was a seemingly inviolable life, and yet Carrie Swanson had been forever plagued by a debilitating problem. She was utterly beautiful. She had hit her full height, 6 feet at 7, and her weight hadn't varied more than a pound or so off its present mark of 121. Her hair was a shimmery natural golden, and her skin had a flawless, translucent eggshell tone that often left makeup artists with little to do at photo shoots but dab on the currently in vogue lipstick and eyeshadow. That her spellbinding beauty could be a liability was a lesson she had learned in her early teens. Okay. That concludes our jury charge and literary for the 225 class. Have a great day.